Everybody. Today is November 10th, 2025, and you're listening to the While We Still Can podcast. We have a great guest for you today. Kevin ANNETT is a gentleman who has personally witnessed systemic crime and atrocities and failure of society to bring these crimes to justice. He found the reach of these issues to extend to entire institutions and household names, and over the last couple of decades, he has done everything in his power to implement justice, which per his account is difficult in a system overseen by, in this case, the alleged perpetrators. He has interviewed a multitude of primary sources and pushed back against powerful individuals. His public statements have been labeled far-fetched at best to libelous at worst. He is here today to discuss his experiences and his work, and when asked to respond to allegations of conspiracy theory, he reminds us that he has never been sued for defamation. Please welcome Mr. Kevin ANNETT.
Thanks, Tina.
Hey, Kevin.
I appreciate it. Hi. I'll give just a little bit of a background for folks who don't know, although you can see it all at murderbydecree.com, which is our site. Oh, there she is. Hi.
Hey, Lisa.
Hey, Kevin. Hey,
Hi.
Tina.
So my background in this work started about 30 years ago on the west coast of Canada, where I was a Protestant clergyman. I began to find that there's a long sordid history that my church was involved in, along with the Catholics and the Anglicans, of carting Native children off to these concentration camps they call schools, and about half of them died there over a century. I mean, that's a death rate higher than in Auschwitz, right? And this was constant, right. Both sides of the border. This happened in America too, of course. And so over many years, after getting thrown out of the church, losing my family, getting blacklisted, the usual treatment of a whistleblower, we eventually started forcing change. We got Canada and the churches to admit that a lot of these children died. They covered it all up, of course, and they indemnified themselves legally, so they could never lose any property or money, which was their main concern, right? But as I got involved more, I got contacted from people all over the world, including in Europe, and same crime, same cover-up. I went to Ireland to visit some relatives, and I met with some survivors of the Catholic Church there. And, sitting there, I remember sitting in Dublin. This was in 2010. And these folks were talking about what had happened to them at the hands of these priests. And I said, this is like listening to Native people on the West Coast. It's the same crime. I mean, used in medical experiments, sterilized, just all the gamut of things that are described as genocide under international law. They all happened. And so in that year, we formed an international tribunal looking into crimes of church and state. And this led to court cases that eventually helped force Pope Benedict Ratzinger out of office and other cardinals. It's really mushroomed all over the planet now because these crimes are global. And we were just talking about the whole case of Cardinal Timothy Dolan in America. And I got contacted by a group of Catholics in Buffalo, New York last month. And one of these women, Sue Moreno, was the brother of a priest, Joe Moreno, who had a whole bunch of documentation about child trafficking and the disappearance of children in the Buffalo diocese. He was set to go to the FBI on a Monday morning. Saturday, he's found dead in his office, 2 bullet holes to the back of the head. Cops say suicide. So how do you shoot yourself twice in the back of the head? I mean, and so, but this kind of thing is common because the thing about especially the Catholic Church, they have the protection of the law and government. Every time there's like a major court case brought against priests, the Attorney General steps in. Doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat, they all do this. The Attorney General steps in and makes sure that nobody higher than a priest can be charged, even though the order is coming right from Rome. There's a policy in the Catholic Church called Crimen Solicitatis. It's been around since 1929. It says whenever children are raped or harmed in any way, everyone is silenced. You're not allowed to tell the police or you get excommunicated. Well, I mean, that's a criminal conspiracy. That's like every Catholic is expected to protect child rapists in their own church. To really commit treason, you're told to disobey the child protection laws of America and its legal jurisdiction to follow Roman rules, right? And the more we educate people about that, the more people are coming forward saying, yeah, this has been happening. Well, no wonder, right? With policies like that and the whole system designed to protect this. So we recently did another court case involving the present Pope, Bob Prevost, who's from Chicago, which is a big hotspot of the mafia Vatican tie. We can get into all that if you like, but Prevost himself, like every pope, is a member of a cult. It's called the Ninth Circle, and it goes back centuries. We've had documentation of this from the Vatican Library. We've had insiders, survivors who were raised in the cult. It's a child sacrificial cult, mirroring the Catholic Mass, where it's believed that the blood and body of the innocent redeem you, whether it's Christ or a child. I mean, it's horrible. It's torture and cannibalism of often newborns.
Yeah.
And one of the places they get the children is through foster care, child protection systems, Catholic orphanages, and hospitals, right? They have a protocol in certain hospitals, especially in New York, Chicago, some of the big cities, where babies are grabbed, fake documents are issued to conceal what happened to the child, like it died in birth and that, and then they're just trafficked. So none of this is conjecture. It's all based on eyewitness documentation, stuff that we've been doing for decades now. And it's like moving a mountain. There's gradual movement, but you got to be really persistent and public and be willing to confront these people, which is what one of the reasons in Canada we forced out the truth is we started going into Catholic churches and these other churches on Sunday morning and just stand there nonviolently and confront them. And as soon as we started doing that, the government started squawking about apologies and investigations, which never happened. But it shows you that it's the people who have to lead this, because the present system at every level is complicit in a lot of these crimes, right?
We are finding that out on all levels of every government. It's crazy. Yeah.
So we're
well,
yeah, go ahead. No, if you have questions or comments or anything.
No, I was just gonna say thank you for speaking up. Like we were talking earlier, how again, people only care if it's directly affecting them. But in my mind, as soon as I know something's happening, I'm like, what are we gonna do about it? And that's why I ordered your Sovereign Citizen book the other day, and I'm going to order the Whistleblower book as well to learn how to do it correctly.
Is that the one you mean?
Yes, that one. I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
We've also, part of our success is we set up common law courts to do this. And what a lot of people don't know is that under international law and in America as well, citizens have the right to form their own investigative bodies, including courts. And they're not just toothless bodies. The verdict of those citizen courts can be acted on by the courts anywhere in the world. And that's why when we forced Pope Benedict out, he hid out in the Vatican till the day he died, right? Because he knew that other courts, there could be arrest warrants issued against him, because we proved that it's quite a funny story, actually. We took our evidence and we shared it all over Europe with governments, saying, here's the evidence that Pope Benedict was ordering bishops to conceal not just child rape, but the trafficking and disappearance of children, right? And it's in writing. So the Spanish government wrote to Rome and said that the Pope could face arrest if he came to Spain. 6 days later, he resigns. February 2013, first time in 600 years, a Pope had stepped down. Then 3 other cardinals stepped down as well, including the head of the Jesuits, because they're all implicated, right? But they got to conceal the fact that was a result of pressure from below, from the people doing this. In America, you've got an even better advantage. The whole grand jury system is based on the idea that the courts can be monitored by, they call it a fourth arm of government, right? The people themselves can put the courts on trial if they're corrupt or they're complicit. So, I mean, Americans especially are very empowered to take action to stop this. But the problem is, being raised in a culture of dependency where you're always looking to a politician or somebody else to, fix it for you. And it's up to us, right?
Well, they're not going to fix it because it's protecting them and their power.
Yeah. Timothy Dolan is a good friend of Trump. As a matter of fact, Trump wanted him in as Pope. And they're levering now. There's a whole thing going on between Dolan and Trump where they're trying to force out the present Pope, using the dirt we have on him to put Dolan in, and So, I mean, anyway, that's a whole typical sordid kind of, politics going on, but it goes right to the top, right?
So, yes. And so, what can you talk a little bit about how when you used to be a reverend, is that
Oh,
what church were
I
you
hate
a leader
titles.
of?
I hate titles.
Okay,
Um,
sorry.
no,
Okay.
no, no, it's all right.
What
No, don't worry. I prefer Rev Kev, which is what
Rev
everyone
Kev.
knows. People call me. Just
Okay,
call me
Rev Kev.
Kev. No, but just Kevin is good. I was in the United Church of Canada. It's the largest Protestant church in Canada. It's like Presbyterian Methodist kind of background.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but the United Church ran a lot of these native death camps. Um,
Mm.
and so do the Catholics and the Anglicans, who are like Episcopalians in America, right? Church of England.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had a background in street ministry and community-based ministry. So that's why I was hired in a little lumber town in Port Alberni. It's on the west coast on Vancouver Island. And it was at the center of the last kind of missionary invasion of native land. And first week I was there, they hired me because they were a dying congregation. And I started building up the congregation, and I invited in the native people, who were like a third of the population, right? And that freaked out the
Mm-hmm.
older people, because a lot of them had worked in these, they call them residential schools. They ran for over a
Mm.
century. The church, you had them in the States,
Yeah.
but they were worse in Canada because they were run totally by the churches. The Bureau of Indian Affairs ran them in America. And actually in the 1920s, Indians in America were given the right to take out full citizenship. So they're citizens under the law, but they're not in Canada. They're under this thing called the Indian Act, which says if you're a native living on reserve, which a lot of them are, you're like a child. You're a ward of the crown, which means you can't open a bank account. You don't have legal rights. It's why,
Oh, wow, that's
you
really
know,
interesting.
Mounties go out and routinely kill native people, and there's no consequence because they're not citizens under the law. Now that's illegal under international law, but this they don't race targeted legislation like
Mm-hmm.
an Irish act. You don't have an Italian act governing what Italians are supposed to, but you do with native people, right? And so that created the legal framework for this genocide to happen, and it still goes on. Big problem in the West with the Chinese takeover of Canada, pretty much all the oil and gas, all the resources. They're forcing their lingering native people who are still on the land. They're just disappearing en masse because you might have heard of the missing women's inquiry in Canada. A lot of native women and whole families go missing in northern British Columbia. Well, they go missing right along the oil and gas, the liquid natural gas lines, all through northern BC, which they're clearing out to grab. China's switching from coal to natural gas, and they need it. So, I mean, I'm constantly getting stories from natives I know in northern BC, like whole families just vanish. You never see them again, right? Or they end up on the streets in
Wow.
Vancouver. I remember when I was doing street ministry there, routinely, several times every month, they police will have shot a native person to death, right? And there's no
Mm.
consequence. They don't even get reprimanded. He said, "Oh, he attacked me with a knife when he was drunk." Well, that deserves a bullet through the heart. I mean, so that thing happens behind the nice camouflage of, nice Canadians, right? There's this whole
Mm-hmm.
legacy that shows why these genocidal things continue, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the power structures, and then the structures that are built to give justice were built by the people that are trying to escape justice, so they're not going to build something that is going to get them in trouble.
Right.
Okay, so after you started doing the street or, doing your Rev Kev stuff, how did you get into finding out about the Ninth Circle and all of these terrible things that
Yeah.
were happening?
Well, right from the very beginning, I would hear stories. Like I had an open pulpit when I had my church, so anyone could get up on Sunday and say whatever they wanted. And in the native traditions, an oral culture, right? So they love that. I mean, they have speakers. So a native man, Nutchelnath, these are like what are called Nootka Indians on the very west coast, and this Alfred Keatla was their speaker. He gets up at the pulpit one day, my second year there, and he starts talking about all these crimes. And he mentioned in the cult, he kept referring to the cult, and he told me after, he and his son told me that when they were kids, they would see they would carve weird things into children prior to raping and getting rid of them. There were ceremonies that went on. So we had inklings of this early on that something very cultic was involved in this. It wasn't, you know, you see, the courts reduced the issue very quickly to one of rape and physical assault. They never allowed any other issue to come into courts. Like they had mass sterilization programs. We've got in murderbydecree.com and on our documentary film Unrepentant, we have people giving testimony, being placed under x-ray machines to sterilize them, tubal ligations, even castration. So, and if you were a particularly smart native, you got the red tag where you had to go and get sterilized. In these Indian hospitals. After the war, one woman said seen a tattoo there, and she drew it, and it was an SS tattoo on the arm of these doctors that were brought over under Project Paperclip, which you probably heard about, right?
Yes.
A lot of Canada brought more Nazis into its borders than any country in the world, because they would be brought in. The British and Americans recruited them, brought them in through Canada, and then in the back door into America, because of course the MK Ultra programs used Nazi expertise and knowledge. They were the pioneers.
Yes.
So
yes.
I wandered from Ninth Circle. I'm sorry.
No,
as I got. You see, Canada was eventually forced to admit some of this stuff, but the month they did, the official narrative got put in, the official cover-up, that some bad things happened, but we've apologized and we're all reconciled now, and there's going to be healing, and they totally fogged the fact of planned genocide that's continuing, right? And so I got censored out of the media totally after that. I had been quoted a lot, and you never saw the name Kevin Annett in the press anymore. So it was like in South Africa under apartheid, if you were banned, you could not be mentioned in the press. You couldn't meet with more than two people. You were like, the Nazis called it Nachtschwebel, night in fog. You would just fog the person in their memory of everything they did, which has pretty much happened. But people in Europe, like one door closed, another opened. And over in Europe, they invited me over. That's when the Ninth Circle evidence started to come out in a big way, because it was based in Europe originally. And there's just 2 hours ago, I spoke to a German woman who was one of the witnesses in our latest court trial, and she was raised in it. There was several people I met early on, like a Dutch woman, Toos Nienhaus, who was raised in this cult. You see, it's intergenerational, and you're born into it. You're expected to sacrifice your oldest child personally. So you have to torture to death, rape, and kill your own child, and then you advance in the cult, right? The term Ninth Circle, ostensibly it's from the Dante, the poem written by Dante Alighieri, the Inferno. I don't know if you've read it, but it says there are 9 circles of hell, and the lowest or ninth circle is where Satan and the souls of those who betrayed a sacred trust reside. So like trust is the most basic quality of human beings. The trust of a child is most sacred, right? And you're expected to betray that. In fact, the term Ninth Circle in Latin and the reference to it in the Vatican Library is nonos perfidia, which in Latin means the ninth betrayal. So you're kind of like, as human beings become degraded, they go to the level where they're willing to betray anything and anyone, their own humanity, their conscience, the life of the child, anybody. And then you can advance, and that they assume gives you power in the world, ultimate power, they believe, right? And we've had confirmation of that so much, it's undeniable now. And that's why it's like the word genocide. For many years, we were the only one using it in relation to Canadian natives. Now the Prime Minister, Pope Francis, they're all referring to genocide, right? And if you can't deny the truth, but if you're the guilty, but you can reconceptualize it, spin it in a direction that doesn't, implicate higher ups, right?
Yeah.
They put in the false narrative, and they don't deny it. They can't deny it after a while, but they put in their own version of it, right? So I mean,
make their own story up.
Yeah.
what that's kind of like what I feel like's happening to Prince Andrew right now.
Oh, he's a
They're
scapegoat.
like, hey,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll throw you to the wolves, buddy.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
Oh.
we could go in that direction a while because I've got a lot of dirt on the royals, but based on eyewitnesses from the natives, it's popular to go after kings and presidents or whoever, right? Because it's kind of sexy to hear about all these people in
Hmm.
power doing these things. But the point is, it's pervasive. It's all through the system. It isn't just the convenient scapegoats, right? It's literally happening in your own neighborhood. Not necessarily with the Ninth Circle, but related practices and, you know,
So I have been going down. So once I started listening to you and I heard the Timothy Dolan thing, and then I started checking out your website and everything and listening to other pods, I kind of went down the MK Ultra rabbit hole.
mm,
And, you know, I feel like conspiracy is used way too much in the media and stuff because if you really break it down, it's not a conspiracy. It's archived in our government paperwork. Like MK Ultra was a thing. It was going on up there. They were trying to figure out how to mind control. It goes along with these cult things and the Mormons and the Catholics
oh yeah.
and then we have these assassins running around and I'm like, how is this connected? You know, it's
Mm.
just insane.
Yeah, what's the word for it? Um,
Yeah, yeah. So okay, so you went over to Europe
yeah.
and you met with all the survivors, and I've seen the woman you were just to the Dutch woman. She is on your website, correct?
Yeah, and there's a 2-hour interview with her and her husband where she goes into great detail about how it operates, where she was taken. See, Toast was taken all over the world. She was in Melbourne, Australia, in a military base. And the thing about these Ninth Circle rituals, they're not arcane, weird, satanic people. That's part of the protection is you put out this image that it's just a bunch of weirdos, when in fact it's integrated a lot with the military, uh, medical research. Like Pfizer and a lot of the big drug companies were using children in these facilities for decades in drug testing experiments from which a lot of them died, right? And medical genocide, right? And but as part of that, the military, one of the main research goals of MK Ultra was to find out how the human brain could still operate under extreme trauma and torture, which had military application on the battlefield, right? So they would
Right, right.
they would like do pain threshold experiments where they would rip
Mm-hmm.
parts off
Yeah.
children's bodies, monitor their brain function, all of that. So that was part of the purpose of these Ninth Circle ceremonies to do that. So there's military, big corporate involvement. I mean, it's institutionalized, just like the arms trade, drug trafficking, human trafficking, the modern slave trade. I mean, it's all connected because it's very lucrative. You know,
Kevin, can you tell us in brief how that woman was able to get out of her circumstances and escape?
Toast, yeah. Um, she met her husband when she was young, and he helped a lot. They also had help from, you see, these cults aren't uniform. There's factions. And like the way the Spanish government uh, levered Ratzinger out because Bergoglio, who became Pope Francis, was friends with the Spanish, and he used that to get himself in, right? Um, so similarly, within the Ninth Circle, there were people who didn't like what was going on, and they helped get Tos out and give her a new identity in that because there were police involved, politicians, judges. I mean, like I say, it goes to the top, and so it was that, and they also left her alive. This is what they do: they will kill the eldest child. And one of the reasons that survivors find it hard to come forward is they're involved in the murders and the torture. They're expected. Like, for example, Toast said they handed her a knife and they brought in a young pregnant girl and she was expected to gut it. And then they eat the fetus, right? I mean, that's part of it. Sometimes
Yeah. Yeah.
mothers are expected to do that to their own newborns. I mean, it's that level of evil, right? So that's why people don't like to talk. But the thing about Toast is Casper, her husband, was a psychologist, and he got her into very deep SRA, satanic ritual abuse counseling, early on, and that helped kind of open up all the, the multiple personalities within her. When you talk to MPD survivors, I was just talking to a woman in Philadelphia the other day who had been in a similar cult. And to describe what happened, she reverted to her 8-year-old self. So, the little child voice came out, right? And that's the only way she can talk about it before reverting to her, quote, normal personality. So that was, Kels had to go through many years of counseling, and under hypnosis, she began to recover some of these deep memories of what had happened to her. And so that's part of the story, how she survived.
Okay, so I had to do some research on the dissociative disorder and how the trauma creates the new neural pathways. And so from my understanding, when they do the extreme trauma, it creates the other personalities, like the 8-year-old personality, and that's why they have to be hypnotized so that they can go into that other personality. Is that what you understand?
Right, and they also go into it naturally, just to protect themselves, right?
Right.
I mean, in a way, we all do that. We're all dissociated to some degree,
Yeah.
right? Like Freud said, to live in society, you got to be dissociated between what you like, your own principles, and what you need to do every day to get. So, in a way, people are pre-adapted to doing that already, and makes it easier, in a way. Well, when you're talking to people about these things, what's the response of 95% of people? Can't be true.
You're
it's
crazy.
Yeah, you're crazy, and it's not true because I don't want to believe it, right? I mean, that's
absolute. Well,
right.
Okay, when I first listened, I was like, this is heavy.
Fair enough.
But since I had already had that Timothy Dolan connection there, I was like, okay, I'm okay. And then the more I listened, and then the Imagination podcast with Emma Catherine, listening to all of those survivor stories, how can you deny any of this after listening to these humans? Like, you don't make that up. I'm sorry, it's.
And the old saying is the best education is a black eye. And when you go through these things yourself, you can't deny it. Like in my documentary film Unrepentant, I describe how when I was a minister, it was still, even when I was hearing all these stories from Native people, there was still that element of disbelief. It was just the church I was raised in, suddenly was responsible for murdering children. There was a disconnect there. But after I got fired, before actually, they went to my wife, Anne. We had 2 children, 6 and 3 years old at the time, my 2 daughters. And they said to her, we're going to make sure he never works again. So if you want to divorce him, we'll pay for it. And they did. Wow. That came out in divorce court. What you do with a whistleblower, you go after their closest people to them, right? And subvert them. It's also very demoralizing when your own wife or husband or is working to stab you in the back for pay, right?
Right.
So when I went through that, I remember saying in the film, when I saw what they did to my children and me, I thought, well, of course they could have killed children. Then look what they're doing to their own, right?
Well,
of course they're capable of that because of what I'm experiencing in my own life and how it's never stopped. The blacklisting, everything. Why would they be acting like that unless they were guilty? Right.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. And haven't you had multiple assassination attempts on your life and hits and stuff?
A few. There was a poisoning in 2021. I've been attacked physically, but and all sorts of other things. But they've never sued me over 30 years, and that's significant because they don't want this in a court of law because it's true. So
and if they did sue you for defamation, you would be able to bring all of your evidence.
I could in examination for discovery. I'll say, okay, I want to see all the records from the church and the Vatican, the government, blah blah. They don't want that. They just want to disparage. It's like I took a year of law once, and where I learned a lot of stuff, but I wouldn't take the oath of allegiance to the crown, so I couldn't go through it. But anyway. In legal process class, they said, in trial, if the evidence is on your side, you argue the evidence. But if the evidence is against you, you attack the credibility of the witnesses. And that's all they've ever done. Kevin's a liar. Kevin rips off Native people, blah, blah, blah. You'll see it on the internet, right? But they never address the evidence. Like half the children dying for over 60 years. Why does that happen unless it's deliberate?
Well, and I really like how you build community with people, because it's a ground level thing. If people know you and trust you, and when
Yeah.
you bring up these crazy ideas, but you're like, but you trust me, so I'm going to piece it together for you in little baby pieces. And
Mm.
after you have conversations with people, a lot of the time they'll be like, well, yeah, I could actually see that. I've noticed that in the past couple weeks having these conversations. And
Right.
so I'm just really appreciative of finding this. And they have you pretty scrubbed from the internet as well,
Oh
except
yeah.
for the murder by decree page, which is amazing, by the way.
Well, I would say about 90% of the stuff we've ever done has been swabbed off the internet, and it's easier to do now. But it doesn't matter because the real evidence, it's proven that the horse is out of the barn. You can't close the door, right? I mean, it's um, pointless for
Like
them
the
to
Epstein
deny this.
files. Yeah.
Oh well.
So tell
Horses
us,
are out.
I'm curious, tell us how it feels with, you've been doing this work for a couple decades, right, or more, and it feels like now, with the Epstein issue in the public sphere, and everybody's aware of it, everybody's thinking about it, how does it feel now to see that in the public eye, and think about how maybe some of the ties you've made through the years will now be more available to the average person around the
Well,
world?
it's gratifying. It's one of the few things that keeps me going besides my own stamina,
Mm-hmm.
and because it's important, when you start out in this work, you get changed by it. I like that quote from Samuel Adams when on his deathbed, when somebody asked him how they made the American Revolution. He said, "We didn't make it; it made us." Right? Because you go into a
Yes.
process and you get changed by it. And I'm not the man I was decades ago. You get hardened, and the best qualities in you have to come forward because it's all you have, right? And you learn that
Yes.
self-reliance and everything. And it is so gratifying to see this change now. But the memory has been swapped, so people don't know where it's coming from. They're thinking, oh, the Canadian government did the right thing finally. That's nice. No, they were forced to do it from the survivors, from
Yeah.
we would hold protests. I'd be the only white guy there. Everybody else would be homeless Native people. And yet they forced it out. I mean, it shows the power. It's so affirming of what human beings can do when we don't give up, and when we just keep
Yes.
remembering those children who are going to die if we don't act, right? That's what,
Well, and it's
you know.
always the pro life people. It always makes me laugh. I'm like, yeah, okay, shut up. Like, you don't want to feed them. You're taking them to these weird cult rituals, whatever. That's
Yeah.
why you want all the babies here. Um,
Right. Well, that's a good
so,
point because the
yeah,
so-called pro-life policy in the Catholic Church is so that it's cutting into their profit margin if they abort children who can then be
right.
used. Right.
Yeah, I
And
like I like to say it all comes back to the money. If you follow the
it
money, you
does.
can find what's really
Absolutely.
Do
important.
you want
That's
to,
right.
would you want to talk about the Vatican Bank a little bit and explain that to me? Because I didn't realize that they had, I grew up Catholic, and as soon as they told me my thoughts could be bad, I had my first panic attack. I'm like, how can a thought be bad? And so that was the beginning of my deconstruction. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't know, like, I always knew it was a money situation, because
Yeah.
obviously it is no tax, money laundering, that whole situation. It's not helping people, and most places are not. But I didn't
Yeah.
realize that the Vatican Bank was so large, and how it
Hmm.
interweaved with the New World Order and all of these things.
Well,
So,
it's a secret society, so they're not allowed to be monitored. You can't know who the directors are. They can't be audited. They were okay. So the Vatican Bank set up in 1929 by Mussolini, the fascist dictator. Because what happened in Italy was there was a guy called Giuseppe Garibaldi, and Garibaldi was like the George Washington of Italy. He united the country, and in 1879, I think, he deposed the Pope because there were these things called the Papal States, right? And between 1870, don't quote me, no, 1870 and 1929, so 59 years, there was no papacy, there was no Vatican, right? It had no power. So, because the Catholics were so pro-fascist, in fact, fascism was really a Catholic Church idea that you got one ruler and everybody,
Right.
follows the emperor,
Same
because
system.
that's like the Pope. He sees himself as an emperor who's above the law, right?
Yes.
And so anyway, fascism and Catholicism really one and the same beast. So the Vatican, Mussolini works out a deal where he sets up the Vatican Bank, hands over $1.5 billion lira, and makes the Vatican a government, a state, which is absurd. It isn't. But the world treats it like that. I wrote this really important book, Dethroning a Rogue Power. I wrote it for people at the UN to say, this is why the Vatican needs to be expelled from the UN. It's a criminal body. It doesn't have the right to be there.
Right.
And so, anyway, so the Vatican Bank set up, and it begins to launder money. That's one of its main purposes. There's a researcher, Dr. Catherine Horton, in Switzerland, and she spent years documenting from insiders and others what the Vatican Bank does. She figures about 80% of all the bank deposits in the world go through the Vatican Bank, or what's called the Bank of International Settlements in Geneva. And that's why right now a lot of the Vatican Bank money is being sent east to China, the so-called BRICS alliance, right? And this is why Trump wants to put in his boy to be Pope so he can get that money, right? Because it's Beijing, the Chinese government is the only government in the world that gets to appoint Catholic bishops and cardinals. They made out a deal, right? So, I mean, there's all this
money. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. And it's all geopolitics, but that's really what it's all about. Like Lisa was saying, it's always you follow the money. And that's, the way it operates on the ground is it's a huge money-sucking corporation. And I did a study. There's only one country in the world where the church publishes its financial records. That's the United States. And 10 years ago, we found that 14.9 billion was raised every year by the U.S. Catholic Church. Of that, less than 1% were used for charity.
I know.
That's profound.
So, I mean, they shouldn't have tax-exempt status, because under the law, you only get tax-exempt status if you put all of your revenue towards religious education or charitable works. Most of the money is going to, buy cruise missiles. They own the biggest small arms company in the world, Vatican Investments, online porn companies, big pharma. It's huge. And they do that. There's a good website, concordatwatch.eu. And a concordat is an agreement between the Vatican and other governments. And they have secret financial concordats in over 100 countries, including the U.S., where a certain percentage of your tax money is funded it goes directly into the Vatican Bank without your knowledge. Right.
No.
So, yep. Every taxpayer is funding the Vatican Bank through now you might ask your congressperson or senator if they know anything about.
They never call back. Don't worry.
Well, of course
Kev,
not.
They
But
don't
I mean,
call back.
I know.
You won't get a call.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, fair enough. But at least it's to raise publicly the fact that, there's a secret concordat where you're committing a crime by funding a convicted, what's called a transnational criminal organization. Because the Vatican traffics human beings, they launder money, they are involved in the illegal arms trade. All those things, the UN Convention on Transnational Crime says those proven criminal bodies don't have the right to their own assets and property. And that's why we've been able in some countries to go in and just seize the Catholic churches and say, you don't have the right to this. You're convicted. We're seizing it as a public service just so that the revenue can't be used for your criminal activity. Native people in Canada have done that. I've been part of these church reclamations, they call them. Just go in, tell the priest to get out, take over the building, use it as a daycare or something, right? So that's what they're really worried about, the threat to their money and their property and public image, right?
Always. But they
Well,
have no shame.
In the States, we have laws that, if a church is tax exempt, they can't be political, but clearly that's violated day in and day out.
All the time. Yeah, I know. They get away with murder, literally, and every administration, Democrat or Republican, they all back it. They wouldn't dare take on Rome, and that's not good.
Okay, so I want you to tell me, so when you first started collecting all of this evidence of people saying that these things are happening, and you went to the ICC, correct, to see if they would take on your case.
Oh yeah, we tried every legal route in Canada, and none of the Canadian courts would do it because they can't put the Crown on trial because they're an arm of the Crown, right? And we tried the ICC and the International Court of Justice. They all said the same thing. They don't have a mandate for doing that. Not only they wouldn't take on Rome, but they can only try individuals. You can only charge individuals with genocide. But they've only done it twice in history. Slobodan Milosevic in Serbia and the Rwandan genocide. They put individuals on trial for that. But in 80 years, they've only applied the Genocide Convention twice. So it's a paper it's just a paper symbol. It's not used in real life.
The system was built by probably people that it's going to protect. It's another justice system that was built probably to protect certain people, right?
Oh yeah, well, like in my book murderbydecree.com, I go into that. The word genocide was created by a guy called Raphael Lemkin, a Polish Jew who emigrated during the war. All of his family got exterminated, and Lemkin wrote the original definition to genocide, and he said it's the destruction of any targeted group for religious, political belief, anything. It was that simple, targeted destruction. After the war, the big powers like America, Britain say, we can be tried for how we've treated colonial people and native people in our own borders. We better rewrite this. So they set up a special commission. The final, you can read it, the final Genocide Convention, they define genocide as the intent to commit in whole and part the destruction of a particular group. Now, intent, how do you prove that in law? How do you prove intent? It's almost impossible.
They have to admit they were doing it. Yeah.
Right. So in other words, it got shifted from a crime. Also, Lemkin had three definitions of genocide: cultural, biological, physical. Cultural, you're trying to wipe out a language, destroy families. Biological, sterilization, forced abortions, whatever. Physical, you line them up against the wall and shoot them. So they reconceptualized genocide as being physical. They left out the others because there's that infamous quote from the Canadian Prime Minister Lester Pearson at the time who said, if we applied the Genocide Convention, we would have to close all our Indian schools because clearly they're cultural genocide and biological.
Because we're doing genocide.
So we can't do that. Therefore, let's switch it all to genocide. Just means when you're shooting them, which in fact did happen, of course. They did execute Native people a lot. I've talked to women in Brantford, Ontario, who witnessed a Canadian soldier shooting kids and throwing them in a ditch, right? Yeah. So, they like to blame Americans for, all these massacres of natives. In fact, it happened even worse in Canada. Anyway, the point is that genocide reconceptualized to protect the perpetrators, and it's still the case now, right?
Which moves along to, I want to talk about the tribunal court that you have set up. So once we realized, after the decades of collecting evidence and taking it to the justice system that is created, you found out there will be no justice in this system, obviously. Right. So as citizens, we have to build our own. And I think that is just so, duh. But I didn't think of it. You know what I'm saying? So, why don't you explain the last, most recent win that you just had and how you built that?
Well, it was really built on the previous cases. The very first case we did, we set up an International Common Law Court of Justice, which is called a tribunal of conscience under international law. It means you have the power of a court to lay charges as long as you follow, rules of evidence and due process on that, which we did. We subpoenaed people, including the latest case. They didn't answer. Now, what happened in both cases, this was the first case against Ratzinger, and then the most recent one against so-called Pope Leo and Trump and a bunch of all people who are implicated in these recent child disappearances and that. None of them answered, which under the law, if you don't answer a charge against you, it's called a pro confesso admission of guilt. Silence is consent, right? If I accuse you of horrible things publicly and you don't answer, it means you're not challenging it. and that it can immediately issue a guilty verdict if they don't answer. So that's why these citizen courts are a win-win. If they respond, they recognize your court, they have to answer the charges. If they don't, they're admitting guilt. So they know that, which is why they kind of surround it all in fog and never report it in the mainstream media or anything. Because unfortunately, things these days are legitimate for people only if they're on the internet and there's official approval from somewhere, right? So anyway, so we did both cases. In the most recent one, it's even more damning because in the dozen years since we did the first court case, a lot more people have come forward. We have sources in Interpol, different police agencies, right within the church itself. We found a lot more. You can see, if you go to murderbydecree.com, you go to ITCCS updates on the banner, and for the last 4 or 5 postings, it's all about this recent court case.
Yes.
And some of the recent stuff we found is this whole Beijing-Washington connection going on. That addition to so-called ballroom that they're building to the on the White House. There's sources
tell
within.
us about this.
Well, Clark Construction, which is the contractor, heavily tied to all of the corporate people that have backed Trump. $300 million to build a ballroom? No. According to contractors who have worked for these people, they say that there's a lot of electronic hardware going in there, and it's got 3 subterranean levels. It's huge. It's even larger if you look, and on those postings we put the schematics up. You can see, there's something huge going in there, and what's also interesting is Beijing and China are within half a degree of latitude of the same place on the planet, and they're exactly equidistant on the other side of the Earth from each other. So you could draw a line through the Earth, and Beijing and China would be, or Beijing and Washington are linked. And a lot of these sacrificial rituals happen on energetic lines, ley lines all over the world to empower what they're doing. And Beijing and Washington are on that. And when you look at the way it's going, China's the rising superpower, and Trump's made a decision to latch on and to ally, despite all of his rhetoric and bellicose talk about China. That's just fog, for the masses. They're the new kind of corporatocracy, if you like. It's this huge rising power in the world. And so, yeah,
his
sorry, go
family
ahead.
and his children have certainly profited a lot from, their businesses in China over the last 8 or 10 years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's all about money, like you say, right? And so, and as part of that, some of the evidence we've come up recently is that Trump was seen at an Epstein party in the spring of 1999 in Manhattan, where there was a snuff film being made with a 5-year-old Asian girl who was killed right in front of them. He participated. It was a sex orgy. And this is from Keith Schiller, who's the guy's former bodyguard to Trump. Keith Schiller. And he doesn't work for him anymore. He has this private
Military
contracting.
militia.
Right. Well, it's a contractor to provide security all over the world, like private armies. And when he was subpoenaed, it's actually he and one other guy, the head of the United Church in Canada, a guy called Gary Patterson, who was implicated directly in these rituals too. They both responded to the court, and they wanted to make a deal in exchange for providing more info. That's one of the ways we found out about this, right? Now, again, none of the people have denied any of this. They've just, if you notice, King Charles, who was accused, went to Rome very soon after the verdict came out on October 6th. There he is in Rome, holding a Catholic mass. His coronation oath said he would protect the Protestant faith in England. There he is in Rome. And it's to show that they've got each other's backs covered, right? Because they've all been convicted lawfully in this October 6th verdict, right? And you can see the evidence online.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, right, same shit.
Yeah. Well, you can see all of the evidence on there and the testimonies and, so with those, do you have a list of the 13 indicted people? I'm sure you know them.
Yep.
You want to read them off?
I can pull it up, yeah.
Okay. I guess I could too.
Well, okay, so Andrew Charles both seen in Ninth Circle events. Charles, there was a story of a man, my friend William Coombs, who was a native man, and he described seeing Queen Elizabeth and Philip show up at a Catholic school in Kamloops in 1964 and take 10 children away, and they were never seen again. And William was to give testimony in London in 2011. The Mounties take him into the St. Paul's Hospital, and he's dead within a day. And the attending nurse described it as, she called them measlines on the fingernails, which indicate arsenic poisoning. But they said no tuberculosis. I mean, they killed him in a hospital, right? Turns out later we find out from insiders in London that Charles had been the one to put out the kill order on William because it implicated his mom, right? I mean, just house cleaning, getting rid of, like Charlie Kirk in Salt Lake City, house cleaning, because he was kind of a loose cannon who knew about the Mormon connection. That's a whole story in itself we did. But the head of NATO, Mark Rutte, he was former president of the Netherlands, who was seen, Toast Nienhuis mentioned seeing him at these rituals, covered up this crime for years. He's in at the head of NATO. You see, when you have that nefarious background, they put people like that in high positions because they can be controlled better that way, right? And he's been in hiding ever since the verdict came out, right? It goes on, the head of Pfizer, what's his name?
Borland.
Albert Bourla. Yeah. He was president as well. Pfizer was using children. Again, like I said, the big pharma, the military and that, they all use these ceremonies for their own purposes, right? And this German witness who I just spoke to a while ago described when she was a child being in Germany and seeing medical doctors having children in cages with kind of wires out of their head, and they were taking blood from them regularly. I mean, there's a whole medical aspect to this that's only being touched on. But do you have the list there? I can read it out. Wait a minute.
Let's see.
It's on.
Hold on.
I'll pull it up for you.
Let's see.
In the meantime, I have a quick question about, some of this is extremely dark, and it reminds me about some of the issues that the folks that were believing the QAnon information, some of the things they were saying. And I'm wondering if you see an overlap or how would that be connected?
What I say when people have evidence or allege to have evidence, I say, well, let's look at the evidence. It can't just be conjecture. It's got to be something that'll stand up in a court of law, like testimony backed up by other witnesses, backed up by documentation and forensic evidence, right? Like we provided when we did the digs at various Indian school mass graves. So when people just come online and allege stuff and say, okay, maybe, but let's see the evidence. And a lot of the people who do the whole QAnon thing, they have a whole view of the world, which it's like being in a religious cult. You have to be in their mindset to really believe it in a way, and it's like when people support Trump, it's irrational. He can do no wrong. It's like papal infallibility to a Catholic. You put leaders in who are incapable of doing wrong, and you're already living under tyranny right there, right? So, I mean, our whole policy is we'll work with anyone, but on the basis of, protecting children, doing lawful prosecutions and sentences, which can then, we're kind of calling the world back to the rule of law, which is being thrown out the window quite often. Anyone who goes into court realizes that, right? So
well, it's like an opinion, it's like, oh, well, who has more money to have more lawyers to keep appealing everything, right. Which is exactly how Trump is not in prison and he's the president. Okay, let me read the top officials that are charged. Let's see, with crimes against humanity, we got Pope Leo, we got Mark Rutte, Charles Windsor, aka King Charles, Andrew Windsor, aka Prince Andrew, Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Donald Trump, the stinky president of the United States, Keith Schiller, his former assistant to Donald Trump, Albert Bourla, CEO of Pfizer, Fred Hiltz, former Anglican primate of Canada, Pietro Parolin, Cardinal of Church of Rome. Timothy Dolan, the Fox News and Friends Cardinal of Church of Rome. Reinhard Marx, Cardinal of the Church of Rome. Gary Patterson, United Church of Canada, you are hereby ordered to appear before the court on Monday, September 15th to answer to criminal charges that you have actively participated in trafficking and cult ritual, rape, torture, and murder of children and adults. Ew. Gross.
Yeah.
Weird. How do you got time for that?
Pardon?
How do they have time for all this? This seems like, a full-time job here, Like...
Well, they don't have to worry about working. Yeah, they just keep everybody worrying
right.
and in debt, so they don't working and in debt, so that they don't have time to fight against this evil. Right?
I know.
We were talking about people in power. Having followed this for a long time, how did you feel when Bill Barr became our Attorney General here in the States?
I don't know a lot about him. I don't trust anyone in power. I kind of an anarchist, right? But I don't know. Tell me about him. What do you think about him?
Well, in general terms, his father was the person that hired Jeffrey Epstein at a school back in decades ago,
mm-hmm.
and he's
with no teaching degree.
He's definitely a staunch Catholic. And he was the person that was in charge when Jeffrey Epstein when he died in jail.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well,
and his dad had written books about raping children and child trafficking, weird alien things, and it just all. Do you think that corruption? Do you think money and power cause the corruption and nastiness, or do you think it's innately there and then they go to those positions naturally? What do you think?
I often wonder about that. I don't know. People used to ask me that as a minister. Like, are people inherently evil? And I think human beings are capable of anything. We're very adaptive. That's been our survival advantage in evolution, that we adapt not just physically to our environment, but what we're raised in is the norm. It's like when counseling women who keep marrying rapists and violent men.
Right.
Well, that happened to me when I was 3. It's the only way I knew I was being someone loved me is when they beat me. Right. So we're like that. Doesn't mean we have to stay like that. But having encountered what you might call definitely the dark side, I know that there is a force. I don't want to put religious terms on it, but there's a force that seeks to corrupt and destroy us, our integrity as human beings, right? Like that ninth circle practice, right? Whoops.
Right.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
So yeah, we're fighting evil. Like this thing operates on different levels, the seen and the unseen, and we can't ignore that. So
now that we've seen it.
Yeah, well, I had an encounter with it. I did before the thing in Rome. Did I tell you about the exorcism I did in Rome?
No.
Oh, this was fun. October 2009. I get invited to Rome, and I bring with me the remains from a mass grave of children at a Catholic Indian school in Ontario. And I was going to do a ceremony for them right in St. Peter's Square. And I'm standing there and I'm thinking, this is the heart of the beast, right? Like, I can't pass this up. So I had done being involved in an exorcism once before on Vancouver Island, which I'll mention. And I thought, got to address this entity, call it out, right? So I'm standing there, and what's really funny is you're not allowed to do anything in St. Peter's Square, a ceremony, a protest, anything, or they grab you like that. It happened to a group of Native grandmothers. They were arrested for doing a pagan ceremony in St. Peter's Square. All they were doing is smudging and, but boom, they're in jail. So anyway, I'm standing there in my clerical robes with this stuff, and I'm calling out this entity of Rome. And the cops and everyone are walking by me. Maybe they thought I was a priest or something. I don't know. But the point is, it was like I was invisible. And the next morning, this is October 12th, 2009, a tornado hits downtown Rome. Boom. First time in like 45 years. Okay.
Oh my God.
That same week, the first reports came out in the European press about Ratzinger's role in concealing this. So, I mean, all these doors are opening, boom. And I realized, okay,
Yes.
I was standing at the epicenter or something, right? And kind of channeled through what I was doing. And I know this, what had happened earlier when I was still a minister in Port Alberni. We did I was invited by a native shaman to help remove this. They have a different name for it in their culture, but expel this entity from this young boy. And we worked for, it was very, quite an ordeal, but for days we were doing this. Finally, when the boy is freed, it was so beautiful. It was like the moment of my daughter's birth, right? When life, you see life appear, and this beautiful kind of light came through the room. And but then, as it left, I felt this thing. It was like it turned and went like this, and it caught me right here, right above the heart. And later, I began to get, not just the effect of the divorce and the blacklist and that, but I said to one of my counselors, it's like I'm being eaten from the inside out. And I get a call. I get a call from this woman, Larissa, out of the blue. And she said, I had a dream about you. I want to see you. And this is in Vancouver. And I go there and she looks at me. She starts telling me all sorts of things about my life that nobody could possibly know, right? And she said, there's something in you. They put it, it's like a device to suck out your soul, basically. It's the way she put it, right? And she worked on it, and she said, you'll always carry the scar, but it's sealed now, and it happened for a reason, because it gives you an insight into this other world. And it's true. When I began to do more meditation, then I realized I knew when things were coming at me. I knew when the danger was there. I knew who was telling the truth and who wasn't. It kind of opened up this whole thing. And I remember one of the native elders told me after what happened in Rome, and I think I was protected in Rome for that reason, right? But one of the native elders said, Kev, I hear that you're from Ireland. You must be a druid. Because I've been reading about those guys, and they could control the weather. They could shapeshift. And I thought, hey, oh yeah. On my mom's side, we were O'Neills, the last of the Ulster Druid kings, the High Kings, and also they were Druids. And I'm thinking, yeah, our bloodlines come into this. Who we are, where we're coming from. It affects all of this. So I realized, okay, this is part of a much bigger drama here.
Bigger thing. Yeah.
And so that's.
Thanks again, everybody, for listening to the While We Still Can podcast. We'll be back with you again soon. Bye.